Welcome everyone into the Barking Browns. Hope you're having a fantastic Friday evening. I am your host, Casey Kenneman, and this is Know Your Enemy, our new weekly series where we do a deep dive and break down the Browns' upcoming opponent. And as always, the show is brought to you by our friends over at SeatGeek. Go over to SeatGeek, use the promo code Barking Browns and get $20 off your first order. And look, I know the Guardians season just unceremoniously ended yesterday, but the Cavs are getting ready to tip off their season. You still got 6 games down at the lake to watch the Cleveland Browns play at home. So go over to SeatGeek, use the promo code Barking Browns, and save some cash. Now look, that $20, go get yourself a couple beers. It's a win-win. So go to SeatGeek, use the promo code, do all the things. Speaking of home games, the Cleveland Browns have a home game in London on Sunday at 9:30 in the morning, and it's against the Minnesota Vikings. And because of that, we're going to bring in a guest to talk about the Minnesota Vikings. So our guest this evening, first off, he's an Army vet. He's the president of the No Sleeves Network, and he's the co-host of Raw Dog Sports. So I will do no further. Ladies and gentlemen, let's bring to the stage Evo.
How's it going, everybody?
Welcome to the party, man. Welcome to the party. Thanks for coming on. How are we doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate the invite to get to come talk about my Vikings and our game versus your Browns. It's something that I don't get to do super in depth too often. Like you said, president of No Sleeves Network, along with our founder Mike Carlisle, both Army veterans. So we're kind of using that as a space for veterans to go out and talk about stuff. But we also have kind of our flagship program that we do, which is Raw Dog Sports. Find us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, everywhere like that, where we do talk in general about sports, but with a heavy football focus. Obviously, Mike is a big Browns fan. I'm a diehard Vikings fan, but we do like to kind of cover everything in the NFL. So while I'm very passionate about my Minnesota Vikings, I don't get to talk about them in depth all the time. So I'm really excited for the opportunity to talk with someone else from a franchise that I don't know. Are we the same amount of being maligned by like all sorts of bad things happening? And like, obviously, like my team has never won a Super Bowl. It's always almost get there and never make it. And you guys with the Browns have had, years and years of big letdowns and things like that. And so like we have, I feel a kinship to the Cleveland Browns with, heartbreak. So it'll be fun to talk and reminisce on some of this stuff.
Well, dude, I'm pumped to have you on. Like I said it before the show, like I've been lucky enough to be on your show a few times, formerly the Lyman Lounge. And I believe I was on the last ever Lyman Lounge show before you guys transitioned to Raw Dog Sports. And you're always surrounded by a sea of Browns fans every time I see you. So I feel this kind of evens it out to get you, one-on-one front and center and to talk about your Vikings. So I think we should just dive right in, man. Like, give me a Vikings vibe check. Where are we at after 4 games of the season?
Oh, you would think that we just finished the season with 3 wins. A loss in Dublin last week to the Pittsburgh Steelers, I know is not a fun thing for the Browns fans to hear because obviously, that's a rivalry there. But it's not going good, not just because there was such high hopes for the season, and we're 2-2, which is not terrible. But the injuries are just stacking up, and it feels like they're stacking in such a devastating way that coupled with weeks 7, 8, 9, and 10 for us are going to be very difficult to overcome. This game versus your Browns for the Vikings now almost seems like make or break pivotal. About to, after the bye, face it in week 7, the Philadelphia Eagles at home. We have the Chargers, Lions, and Ravens. It's a murderer's row of teams there. And so we could easily drop all 4 of those. So if we come out of the bye at 2-3 and lose 4 more, the uphill battle to try to look at a playoff spot when a lot of Vikings fans felt like we have everything figured out on this team now, except for the question mark at quarterback. It feels like such a letdown. And so I think, we are very close to teetering on losing it for the entire season. So the vibes right now are very scary. They are not high.
Yeah, and from the outside looking in, you're kind of in the position we were at in 20 after coming out of 23, that you just felt like your team had such a high floor because of the coach and the stability that not that you could put anyone out there, but you're going to win games. If you look at what you were able to do last year with Darnold and get him paid, and O'Connell feels like an elevator, especially at the quarterback position. And they did the same thing they did. They went and got a guy who was once highly touted in like a reclamation project to kind of be behind JJ. And unfortunately, you had to see him sooner than you wanted to see him, obviously.
Yeah.
So let's start there. Let's start with the injuries, because I think that's from the outside looking in, and we've sat in that seat the last 2 years where we know just you get decimated, and you're at this point, you're going to be starting a center who's never snapped a ball in college or the NFL in a live game, and that's
Yeah.
a scary place to be.
That offensive line right now for us is the biggest question mark in going into this game, because we do have our starting center, Ryan Kelly, goes down with another
Mhm.
concussion, and it's into the conversation space with Kelly of not like how many weeks before he's going to be back, but whether or not he legitimately needs to consider calling it a career. And we went into the season with his primary backup being Michael Juergens, who was a late round pick last year. And a lot of people weren't happy about that pick just because he played at a smaller college, never really had a great resume, but obviously the Vikings felt good about him enough to keep him
Mhm.
on the squad as that only primary backup. And then he goes out with an injury. And so now we are kind of scrambling. What are we going to do? And it's Blake Brandel, who was our starting left guard last year, and at times looked at least league average, but again, has never snapped a ball before, not in a live game at
Yeah.
least. And so that's a very scary thing. That's also forcing us to because Donovan Jackson, our first round pick, he had some wrist surgery and he'll be back sooner than later. But, Brandel was playing left guard last week for him, but now we have to play a rookie undrafted free agent in Joe Huber at left guard, who, of course, I like his upside. The team was, high on him. But again, we've only seen him in the preseason, and you can only expect so much from a rookie undrafted free agent there. And so that interior portion is scary. And then our right tackle, Brian O'Neill, who's been a stalwart for years, I would
Mhm.
say, a top 10 to top 5 right tackle. He goes down with what sounds to be like an MCL sprain, hopefully only out for a couple weeks, but that's forcing us to play yet another backup there at right tackle in Justin School, who started the year as our left tackle while we were waiting for Christian Darrisaw to come back. Things are just kind of in shambles, and that's you look at our first two games, it was pressure on pressure on pressure. JJ gets hurt in that second game versus Atlanta because of the pressure. And then we saw it trickle into uh, last week versus Pittsburgh, where it was just tons and tons of pressure, even against a bad defense like the Bengals in week
Mhm.
3. Yes, they do have Trey Hendrickson, but they were still able to get pressure, able to get sacks. And we are being sacked. The Vikings are being sacked at the third highest rate right now since 2000. Uh, the only ones that are worse than us are the 2023 Giants and I believe it was the 2002. What year was the Texans were
The
the
Texans,
expanded
yeah,
one? Yeah,
David Carr's rookie
David
year.
Carr.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so we are being sacked at almost on 14% of dropbacks right now, which is an insane
Yeah.
rate. It's untenable. And now we're looking in the face of going up against your Browns, the number one PFF rated defense and the number one PFF rated pass rush. It's a scary thing to think about right now, where we thought this offensive line was restructured this year, going out and getting Willie Fries,
Mhm.
getting Ryan Kelly, drafting a first round left guard. We thought we had fixed those internal woes,
Mhm.
and now it's what should have been a strength is probably the biggest weakness on the team.
Yeah, and getting Darrisaw back, and he just returned. How does he look to you?
So despite one really bad snap last week, he's looked good. He's looked like normal Christian Darrisaw to
Mhm.
me, and I think the world of him. I think that he's up there in the conversation with the top left tackles in the league. And even on the snap last week where a guy got by him, that was I almost want to put the blame a little bit more on Carson Wentz because it was such a deep drop back where most tackles in the NFL say, once the quarterback drops 8, 9, 10 yards, you are in no man's land. I can no longer guarantee your protection. And that's what happened on that play. Overall, I think that he's looked really solid, but it's such a limited sample size so far with him being back. And this week is going to be the true test of going up against elite pass rush, especially Myles Garrett.
So let's go to the quarterback position. So obviously, a lot of hopes were hung on J.J. McCarthy being able to swim right away, thrown in the deep end of the pool. Do you think it was a mistake to put him back in the game after he injured himself against the Falcons?
I mean, I would say if they knew the severity of the injury, yes, it was probably a mistake. And being there at that game, I noticed that Carson Wentz started going out and warming up in that fourth quarter. And I thought it was interesting because you normally don't see the backup with the helmet on out there
No.
rocketing balls. And then, it was Sunday Night Football. They started doing like a light show and stuff like that. Lights drop and then lights come back on and JJ's back out on the field. And I had mentioned to my wife, like, why is he out there practicing? So the Vikings obviously knew that there was something wrong with JJ. To what extent, I would like to give them the benefit of the doubt and say they didn't understand as bad or that it was as bad of a high ankle sprain. But in that situation, yeah, I probably would have rather pulled him. We were pretty close to being neck and neck with that Falcons team, despite looking like we were getting trampled on that whole game. And one of the big deals with JJ is his mobility. He's really good throwing on the run. If his knee is hurt, you're limiting that mobility and one of his superpowers. So I probably would have, if I had known that he was that injured, I would have wanted him off the field. And then now it's again, go back to these offensive lineman injuries. Yeah, we're going to get some guys back sooner or later, but I'm scared for when he is healthy to go back out there.
So you guys have a bye. You guys have you went to Ireland last week, and then you stayed. You're the first team in NFL history to stay and do a second game over in Europe. But you guys see your bye on the other side of this game. Is there the thought that you're going to get some of these linemen back on the other side of the bye? Is that kind of the hope right there?
So Donovan Jackson, that first round left guard, he actually played through the injury in the Bengals game. They knew about the injury, had already scheduled his surgery to have the wrist fixed, and said the surgeon said there would be no more damage done by playing in that game and waiting on the surgery. So they knew it was going to happen. I think they timed it up intentionally so that way he can have the surgery, have time to rest, recover, and be back after the bye week. And then the hope would be that Brian O'Neill is able to come back after that bye week. MCL sprains, they vary widely from being out for 2 weeks to all the way up to 8 weeks, depending on the severity. We haven't gotten a whole lot of information as fans as far as how severe it is, though he hasn't been put on IR, which would lead you to believe that we're looking at less than 4 weeks of him being down. So getting those two guys back will make a huge difference. Juergens, the new de facto starting center, while we wait on Ryan Kelly, because I personally am not expecting Ryan Kelly to come back this year. If he does, it'll be later in the year, and I'll look at that as a cherry on the top. But Juergens, while he is again late round draft pick from last year, he performed better than I expected in the games that he played. Not great by any means, but better than I expected. And he has a hamstring injury. Not sure what the prognostication is on that either. The hope would be that 2 weeks of rest, maybe he can be back in there, but hamstrings can be tricky sometimes.
So let's talk about Van Ginkel. I saw a stat that you guys were the number one team against the rush. It's a small sample size, but when he's in, and then with him out, you guys are near the bottom.
Yeah, 31st, I believe, without him in there. And we saw the same sort of stat line last year with Blake Cashman at linebacker, who is also on IR, expected to hopefully be coming back after that bye week. Last year when he was out, we won every game, or excuse me, with him in, we won every game, and with him out, that's where we took our losses up until the end of the year. And we're seeing the same sort of correlation with Van Ginkel, where him being on the field with Jonathan Grenard and a Dallas Turner having that kind of Lambo set of pass rushers allows them to be very flexible in the Flores defense. And that defense requires flexibility because he calls up so many unique and exotic looks and blitzes and things like that to bring the pressure. With Van Ginkel out, he was kind of, I don't want to necessarily call him the old head, but he's very intelligent, to the point of being able to get those pick sixes last year. Talking about he's able to read certain things from the quarterback where he knows this is going to be a little short screen dump off, and I'm going to be able to go in there and cause havoc. And in he played 8 plays, I believe, against the Bengals and had 2 sacks. So just that as a pass rusher alone is a huge loss not having him on the field. But obviously, he's able to multiply options on that defense. It is a small sample size, but if we want to track correlation with that, obviously the rush defense is a lot better with him being out there. I would feel more comfortable with him being out there, even if we want to throw away the statistics, just because he's a good veteran player that you can rely on. So unfortunately, out again with the neck. Previously, he had been out early this year with a concussion. I think that the way that the Vikings are kind of looking at this is like this bye week is almost a separate season for us. Like we need to get
Mhm.
healthy for this separate season, because it is a long year. Despite being 2-2 right now, it is a long year. Other teams are going to have injuries. Who knows what the rest of the season is going to look like? So, and we do have a pretty veteran team. So making sure that players are healthy for the long haul is important. So I think it's always been the Vikings MO: keep these guys as healthy as possible. If a guy's injured, give him an extra week to come back type of situation. I think that if need be, they probably could have played Van Ginkel. They probably could have played Christian Darrisaw a lot earlier than they did. But they like to play things very safe with their guys. And that can both be a boon and a blessing, because I really would have loved to have seen Christian Darrisaw out there earlier in the season
Yeah.
to try to protect our quarterback, who obviously went down with that knee injury.
All right, let's get to the offensive breakdown here. We've already touched on the offensive line, and I agree with you. I think when healthy, I think Darisaw is right up there with the best in the league. So it's about him being healthy. Tall task for him this week, obviously facing Myles Garrett, the tallest task you could have at the position of left tackle currently in the NFL. Is facing Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett's also got an injury of his own. He was limited in practice this week with an ankle injury. But let's go ahead and talk about the Carson Wentz experience. You are 2 games into the Wentz experience. Where do you sit with it right now?
I think that he's performing as expected for a backup quarterback. It would be a lot. I would be more comfortable if he had been with us the entire preseason. I think that he was someone that we probably contacted before making the trades for Sam Howell in the draft. And he probably said, I'm going to wait. I'm going to see if a team has a quarterback go down, because maybe I
Mm.
could slip in. And I don't fault anyone for that, any player for trying to go out there and get a starting job or a better opportunity. But alas, we're set with him coming in, only being on the team for roughly a month, and trying to pick things up. And while he is a veteran, has been around a lot of systems, it still is got to be a steep learning curve for every system that you go into to learn the new verbiage. So far, I think that he's looked again like a good backup, an above average backup. But he still has some Wentz isms about him.
Yeah.
He is very keen on first read, and you take him off that first read, and that's when he starts to just slow down too much. And with this offensive line, he needs to be rapid. He needs to be quick. And he needs to either have that first read or a bailout option. And our offense honestly just hasn't been set up for that this year. That's been one of my biggest complaints with the team. And while I love and have a lot of faith in Kevin O'Connell, KOC loves to get those big splash plays, those big
Mhm.
strikes. He is all about the downfield passing and having a quarterback who has the arm to make the throws and dissect what's going on in order to make those throws. A lot of late developing routes. And the first 2 weeks of the NFL, we ran some of the least amount of quick game. Um, Ran a decent amount versus the Bengals, and I think obviously you can see the result of how
Mhm.
how that turned out. And then we went away from it again last week versus the Steelers. It's going to require the Vikings to take a good hard look at, hey, our offensive line is decimated right now. We are starting a backup quarterback, and if Wentz is going to be successful, we need to do a lot more of what we did versus the Bengals, not just on defense. Obviously, that's an outlier, but we need Wentz to have quick options, quick drop offs, because it's not even about like just how good the Browns secondary is, but that pass rush, you have no time. You have to get the ball out quick. There cannot be late developing routes, and that actually fits into what Wentz does relatively well. He just didn't have the opportunity to do as much of it last week. So I'm of course not a huge Wentz fan. I would love to see my guy JJ in there,
Oh yeah.
but I can't complain too much with how he has done. Obviously, the sacks are a problem. A lot of that is the offensive line, but there's a fair share on his shoulders as well for not making quick enough decisions.
when you look at the skill positions, you guys are loaded, especially on the outside, and you get where KOC's coming from, trying to get those guys in the open field where they can do damage in the second and third levels. And everyone knows, Jefferson's, if not the best, the second best receiver in the league. I don't think the shortest of lists he's going to be on everyone. But you guys also did get Jordan Addison back last week.
Yeah.
And he showed what he was capable of with the ball in his hands. And I'd even go, I like Naylor. And Hawkins has been off to a slow start. Can you speak on that a little bit? What you've seen out of him this year?
Yeah, it's interesting because Hawkinson had such a good camp, like a very good camp. He was one of JJ McCarthy's favorite targets outside of Addison, because Justin Jefferson was down with a hamstring injury. And so my expectation going into the year was that it was going to be a big year for Hawkinson and a big year for Jordan Addison. And we really haven't seen too much of that with Hawkinson yet. He seemed to almost have some yips through the first two games, some uncharacteristic drops. Showed a little bit more in the Bengals game, and then last week, just had kind of a moderate game. I would expect that he's probably going to be a lot more involved going forward, because if we do kind of like I'm hoping and run a lot more quick game, Hawkinson's going to be able to be effective in that in the middle of the field. But yeah, it has been a little bit disappointing so far to see how he's performed. Again, I'm hoping it was more of like one or two game yips, drops, things like that he'll kind of be able to recover from. As far as the other skill position players, though, yeah, obviously Justin Jefferson is going to draw a lot of eyes, a lot of coverage, and that hopefully will open up a guy like a Jordan Addison, as long as he doesn't have to outrun a linebacker like last week, which blew my mind. He deep pass to Addison, and somehow the North Carolina State linebacker runs him down and drops him at like the 3-yard line. That killed me. But yeah, Addison, obviously a big threat. I'm expecting him to be heavily involved as well.
Yeah, I don't like giving Pittsburgh Steelers any due, but Peyton Wilson's got dumb speed for a linebacker.
Yeah, very.
I mean, that was I saw something like that happen once when it was Jarvis Landry of all people got in the open field, and it looked like he was gone, and Luke Kuechly just ran him down. It kind of reminded me of that. Like, you should, as a receiver, to get run down by a linebacker, it's
a little
pretty rare.
embarrassing.
But when those guys can really cut it loose. Let's talk about Jordan Mason, man. He was someone that when I saw you guys pick him up and I was hearing the stuff coming out of camp, it was like he's really pushing Jones for running back one. But you could tell that O'Connell trusts Jones. And I get it. I mean, he's older back, but he's super dependable. But with him going on the short-term IR here, Jordan Mason's been a hammer. Like, that's something, if you're trying to put a pass rush at bay, you got to be able to run the ball. What have you thought of him this season so far?
So our trade for Jordan Mason, I was super stoked about. We got to see him firsthand when he kind of broke into the league last year, playing for San Francisco. One of his first games with McCaffrey being out was against my Vikings at home, and he looked fantastic. And so going out and getting him, I knew that he was going to at least be a solid complement. Jones is definitely not the between the tackles type of guy. He's your outside of the tackles receiving type of back. And we needed someone who could pound the rock, because KOC's offense has been so predicated on the splash plays and passing that not having a good between the tackles runner was one of our biggest deficiencies. So getting Jordan Mason in has been awesome. Through camp, he kind of looked like the better guy. And my fear all along with Jones had been the injury stuff. I mean, we saw last year, he never missed a game, but he sat out a lot of portions of games. And it was those knees, the old man knees. I mean, he's 31 years old, but they're old man knees for a running back in the NFL. And that's definitely what came up this year, were those old man knees. So getting to see a more heavy dose of Jordan Mason was something that I was excited about. And he's definitely looked the part. But again, it is difficult running behind such a tattered offensive line. You brought up a good point. If we want to kind of combat that pass rush, you need to have a running game. And that's one of my big fears here is, are we going to be able to put together a semblance of a running game behind this offensive line enough so that we can run something like a play action to try to take advantage of, the slowing the pass rushers down a little bit. And I have serious question marks about that. So this would be great to see Jordan Mason have a good game. I personally just don't see it happening. I don't see him eclipsing the 80-yard mark. At that would be like a high water point for me, just because I personally don't have the faith that the offensive line is going to be able to push your guys around enough to create holes for him. For all the good things that Jordan Mason does, he's not a burner. He's not a speedster. He is a one-cut thumper type of guy who is tougher to take down and tackle, but he's not blowing the doors off of anybody. So he needs those holes made in order for him to be effective. And I'm just not super convinced that we've got the personnel out there to be able to make that happen right now.
Let's switch sides here, and I want to get your perspective on this. The Vikings defense, the first thing I think of is Brian Flores. He's a madman. Like he's like that dude. It's when you watch the tape, the amount of exotic blitz packages this man has, it's more than anyone else in the NFL. I am convinced. And you guys are blitzing at a clip of 35.8%, which is second in the league to the Atlanta Falcons, strangely enough. But what is the feeling on your side of the fence right now, knowing that he is going to be facing a rookie quarterback in Dylan Gabriel?
I mean, the common trope is that good defensive coordinators will always take advantage of a rookie quarterback. And so looking at how weak that offensive side of the ball, specifically the offensive line is for us, yes, it excites me a little bit to think about what we could do against a Dylan Gabriel. That being said, Dylan Gabriel has 6 years of college experience or whatever it is. Like he's
like
got
Van
a lot
Wilder.
Yeah. And so this guy's seen a lot. I'm sure he hasn't seen a Brian Flores defense, but he's seen a lot. He's been through a lot. And so you're not going to get the same sort of yips that you would from a rookie quarterback who did 2-3 years in college in one system or something like that. That being said, you guys now have a new left tackle in there. I'm not sure if Cam Robinson is going to be starting for you guys or not.
And neither are we. We are not sure as of tonight.
And we got to see a healthy dose of him when Christian Darrisaw went down last year. We traded for Cam, and he's an average tackle. He's not going to be like, this is a guy we need to re-sign, but he's an average tackle, which is what you want right now, right? And so
a massive upgrade from the trash heap we've been putting out, the traffic cone we've been setting out there at left tackle.
Look, I would take a Cam Robinson right now to play something along my offensive line. So us having a knowledge of Cam Robinson, I think, works to our benefit, and maybe a reason why the Browns don't want to throw him out right away. But I look forward to the opportunity to go up against a rookie quarterback. But that being said, I think the script for the Browns has to be running the ball, because teams have been very effective so far this year at running the ball against the Vikings. Despite the fact that we go out and we sign a Jonathan Allen, a Javon Hargrave, and all of these exotic schemes and everything, the biggest spot that we've been taking advantage of was the run game so far. We have been a bottom 15 team in the run game this year, and it was not something that I think any of the Vikings fans expected. We expected the good pass rush that Flores always brings, but it's that run defense that kind of scares me. And the way Quinshon's been playing, like he looks like he's primed to be able to take advantage of our weakness there as well.
On the season, you guys are 24th in rush yards per game and third in pass. That's the imbalance there. Talk about a matchup along that line that you're looking forward to, your defensive front against this tattered Browns offensive line.
Well, with Van Ginkel being out, we are still going to see a healthy dose of Dallas Turner, who was first round pick for us last year. I think that he's played good so far this year, not necessarily up to what you would hope for a first round pick, but I'm not one of those guys that thinks that a first round pick has to come in and be a splash player right away. I'm okay with his development so far, and I know that he's probably got a breakout game coming sooner or later. It's between Dallas Turner and Jonathan Grenard and how they're going to be able to attack specifically that left tackle position to try to get Dylan Gabriel off of his script. And the hope would be that it would be up against a Cam Robinson, because hopefully they know his issues and his problems and would be able to take advantage of that.
So I actually talked about a pre-show with you a little bit, and this is something I think as a league we're deficient in. I don't think there's enough Harrison Smith appreciation. So what year are we in Harrison Smith's career now? Where are we at?
13, 14, something like that. He is a crusty old vet. Him and I are about the same age. But look, Harry the Hitman has been one of my favorite Vikings ever since we brought him to the team. He's been a stalwart defender for us. And like you said, we talked a little bit about this before the show, and the conversation is going on online of, is Harrison Smith worthy of being a Hall of Famer in the future? And obviously, I bang the table as a homer that yes, I would love to see him as a Hall of Famer. And a lot of people outside, because maybe he doesn't get the same respect that he should, say no because he doesn't have all the same accolades as some other guys who get into the Hall of Fame. But when you compare left and right the stats between him and a guy like Troy Polamalu, who I think most reasonable people would say, yes, this guy is absolutely a Hall of Fame player.
Hmm.
Harrison Smith's stats outweigh Troy
Yeah.
Polamalu's, and it's not like he's got a resume that timeline wise completely extends beyond him. His stats just in the time that Polamalu played versus the time that Harrison Smith played, they are neck and neck, or Harrison Smith is beating out Polamalu in most of those stat lines. And stats aren't everything. Context plays a big role. But I would say that contextually, Harrison Smith has been one of the premier Vikings defenders since his day one with the Vikings.
Yeah, I never got it. I never got how come he wasn't getting the recognition league wide for what I see every time I watch him play. I
Yeah.
mean, it's everywhere, and his game's evolved over time to where he could do anything on the back end, and to still be doing that at year 13, to me that's wild and deserves the recognition.
Yeah.
Um,
It's going to be a sad day when he decides to call it quits.
mhm.
It's been a lot of Brian Flores that has brought him back. That's something that he's been very vocal about, of like he's been ready to potentially hang them up for 2-3 years now. And then he keeps saying, he's like, I can't quit on Brian Flores. I can't quit on this defense. I love playing for him. And so, they've obviously given him time for rest. He had a little bit of an illness and stuff like that this year. And I think that they kind of cater a little bit towards Harrison Smith to
Yeah,
keep him happy, keep him healthy, because he is getting older. But understand that this guy is doing us a favor essentially by coming back, because despite being in the twilight of his career, he is still an effective defender.
don't boss me around, Jacob. I'm not going to fold to peer pressure. All right, we're going to wrap this up. We're going to try to do something different here, and every guest I have on, I'm going to hit with this question. And this is, and I told you pre-show, this is something that me and one of my buddies, we always go back and forth with each team's Mount Rushmore and different configurations. So, what does your Minnesota Vikings Mount Rushmore look like?
Yeah, so it's tough for me because I became a Vikings fan in 1998, where Gary Anderson misses a field goal in the NFC Championship game, the only field goal that he missed the entire year, and we don't go to the Super Bowl. I remember standing in front of my TV, bawling my eyes out
Oh
as
yeah,
like an 8-9 year old. And so I grew up in an era where like I learned a lot of those guys and fell in love with them. And then as I grew to understand the team historically, it's tough. We've got so many players on this team that are pivotal, impactful to pop culture, to the NFL, and to our team. And so it is tough, but I would say like there's to me an easy top three as far as players go. Number one being Randy Moss, one of the greatest receivers of all
yeah,
time. You have a term, getting mossed. When
yep.
a player's name becomes synonymous with like a term, it's pretty incredible. Uh, Adrian Peterson, obviously, I grew up right in the middle of that era, where I think that he's one of the top 5 to 10 backs of all time. Almost broke the rushing record. Despite some of those off the field issues and stuff that he had, he was such a game changer. NFL MVP for the year, and really carried some less than good teams on his back and got him to the playoffs. And then you have Fran Tarkenton. Some say that he is the first dual threat quarterback. He kind of
Mhm.
made the quarterback position a running position, and kind of revolutionized the league way back when in the 70s. And then it started to kind of come back now more in the modern era where you see true dual threat type of quarterbacks. And then the last spot, I would be remiss to not bring up Bud Grant, essentially the patriarch of the Minnesota Vikings. A phenomenal coach, the Vikings' most winningest coach, a fantastic guy. He was good to his players, but he also expected the best and really made them gritty. Practicing way up north in Bemidji, Minnesota, where it is frigid cold, getting them out there to practice to harden them up, toughen them up, and created just fantastic squads. But yeah, look, it again, it's tough for me because like I see, especially those three players who I know are so impactful with the Vikings, but then you can bring up guys like Chuck Foreman, one of my favorite running backs of all
Yeah.
time, Alan Page, Carl Eller, those purple people eaters,
Mhm.
John Randall, Chris Carter. There's been so many guys.
Yeah.
That's not even getting into, the offensive line with Steve Hutchinson, Matt Burke,
Yeah.
Ron Yeri, like Mick Tinglehoff. There's been so many incredible players on the Vikings throughout the
Yeah.
years and throughout their history. I was blessed again, like I said, to go up for that Vikings home opener versus Atlanta, which we unfortunately lost. And the day before, my wife and I did a tour of US Bank Stadium, and it was one of the coolest experiences because the stadium is so filled with historical artifacts
History.
and
Yeah.
and stuff about the team and the players. Like it got me truly emotional to see a lot of that stuff, understand how incredible that franchise is, everything that they've done, the players that they've had, and sooner or later, like the saying that gets put out by one of my favorite Minnesota Vikings podcasts, Purple Daily, is we want one before we die, just one before we die.
Yeah.
And we've seen
Well,
too
we've heard
many,
that on this side as well, brother.
yeah, too many Vikings fans come and go and pass away, and they never get to see a championship. It needs to happen sooner or later, and so I just need to last long enough to see a championship.
Well, I'm a little older than you. One name that would be hard for me to keep off would be Chris Dolman.
Yes.
Keith Millard. I mean, they just had some studs. I will say this for my money: the 2012 Adrian Peterson season is the greatest season I've seen by a running back with my own eyes.
Yeah.
I mean, he got injured at the very end of the previous season and came out and then rushed for over 2,000. Even this is 13 years ago, and we're starting to see that timeline from where you get an ACL to when you can come back, get shorter. It used to be like a year and a half, then it got to but he did it in such a short time span and was at the very top of his game. It's one of the most miraculous things I've ever seen.
Yeah, to me, that is that litmus mark of when we really start to see the surgery change. ACLs used to be so damning for a player,
Mhm.
where it wasn't just like, oh, you're looking at 12 to 15 months recovery, but this player will never be the same. And Adrian Peterson just completely shook off that notion narrative, came back in 8 to 9 months, and had one of the greatest rushing seasons ever.
Yeah, hands down, man, hands down. Well, hold on. Jacob has a hard-hitting journalistic question up here that you got to answer. He'll be mad at me forever if I don't ask.
All righty.
Is cereal soup?
I would like to say no, but I am aware of gazpacho being a cold soup. I don't know that I would call milk a broth. Now, obviously, cream can be added to soups to make
Chowders.
a broth.
Potato soup.
But I would think that there needs to be something other than just straight milk. I wouldn't consider, because I would have to assume, without doing research here, that in order for something to be a soup, it needs a broth, a liquid outside of just a singular milk. So that would be my argument, is that cereal is not a soup because it doesn't have a traditional style of broth where it is water or stock mixed with something. But I think that there is a competitive argument to be had there whether or not it could be a soup.
All right. Time for the uncomfortable part. I need to get your score prediction for this game on Sunday morning.
Well, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, right now the over-under for our game is the lowest so far this season.
Yeah, it is.
That's awesome. Vegas thinks very highly of both of our offenses, or very highly of our defenses, I suppose. Look, I am a homer. I realize how stacked the odds are against my Vikings here. I have to take the Vikings in this game.
Vegas agrees with you.
Pure hope. And I think Vegas is crazy for the spread that they have given us, to be completely honest.
Is it crazy that the spread didn't change when they changed quarterbacks? It was 3.5 when it was Flacco, and it stayed 3.5 with Gabriel.
I mean, I guess you know better with how Flacco's performed. I've seen as much as I can. But I didn't think he was great, but I don't think you can expect a rookie to come in and do a whole lot better. So I suppose in that mindset, it should have stayed the same. However, the opportunity for disaster to strike with a rookie quarterback is a lot higher as well. Especially going up against, going from your guys' practice squad defense, which I'm sure is good, to a different form of calculus with Brian Flores.
Oh my God,
the uniqueness. That being said, like I I truly think that this is a make or break type of game for my Vikings. It's week 5. It shouldn't be a must win, but it feels like a must win for this team. So I do have it low scoring. I have us barely edging it out, 16-13 for my Vikings. I could see it 16-14. I could see it even being lower than that, and that would be a terrible game to watch. But I do think that this is going to just be a defense is absolutely demolishing the offenses that are on the field. It could be a very unpretty game for fans of big high scoring football.
I tend to agree with you. I'm preparing myself for the race to 14.
Yeah.
If it gets to be a shootout and it turns to a 17-point game, we'll see. But I don't have high hopes for it.
And
But
off the record, like I am so used to the Vikings breaking my heart that I am emotionally prepared to take the L here. Like I do think this game is way closer to a coin flip, just because
Mhm.
you can't predict and project defensive turnovers and things like that
Yeah.
very easily. But this game very well could come down to which team gets the most turnovers, because
Yes,
I think that there's just
100%.
tons of pressure, tons of opportunity for mistakes to be made. And so that makes it very difficult to weigh one way or the other how this is going to turn out, because it's who's getting the luck that day.
Yeah. Yeah, I view it the same. I think both quarterbacks are going to be under siege all day, and it comes down to who makes the biggest mistake, because there's going to be mistakes. These defenses are going to force mistakes. So yeah, I'm preparing. Well, we got a score prediction here. Let's go. I
Believable.
Yeah,
Very
you know what I mean.
believable.
That is 100% in the realm.
Absolutely.
And I think it might come down to the team. The team that wins might score a defensive touchdown. I think that's the type of game this could be.
Yeah.
Look at it. MC predicting a shootout. Just high flying
Yeah.
offense.
Like if you guys are able to put up 23 points, again, I almost wouldn't be surprised, because maybe Dylan Gabriel goes out there and all of a sudden the pass game really starts to work for you guys,
Mhm.
like it, unlike it did with Flacco behind center. That being said, you guys are down a couple wide receivers, correct?
Oh yeah, Cedric Tillman just went to the IR, so you're going to
Yeah.
see more Isaiah Bond. Malachi Corley is getting called up to the squad for this week. I don't even know what that looks like, what their plan is for him, because it's
Yeah.
kind of all been since training camp, so we haven't seen him in action yet.
Said running game. I think that Quinshon Judkins scares
Yeah.
me right now with how we've been defending the run. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Quinshon get one, if not 2 touchdowns on Sunday.
Well, I got him on a fantasy team, so I hope that's from your mouth to God's ears right there. That'll be dope. Evo, you've been awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on. Let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me and my co-host Mike on Raw Dog Sports. That's YouTube, on X, on Facebook, or any of the other social medias that are out there. And then the No Sleeves Network, you can just go to nosleevesnetwork.com to view any of our content. Again, we are both military veterans. We like to support military veterans and veterans causes, and give veterans a safe place to talk about just the crazy stuff that goes through our mind. Blog posts, video game streaming, anything like that. We like to kind of be that kind of springboard for veterans to have an outlet that isn't all about what happened in the war or something like that, but it can be just a place for you to let loose and be around other people, almost like your local bar or something like that, where you can hang out with your buddies, but you have a space that you can do it kind of across the country. So that's nosleevesnetwork.com and Raw Dog Sports on YouTube, X, Facebook, and all those social media platforms. And look, Casey and Barking Browns podcast as a whole, I really appreciate you for having me on. It was great and fun to talk about this. I'm excited for the matchup. Other than that, you can follow me on X, at Raw Dog Evo. So again, thank you so much for having me on.
No problem. You guys know what to do if you're listening. Go follow the man. He's got great insights. He does a tremendous service for other veterans as well. So give him his props. And if you're out there watching, consider liking and subscribing. If you're on Twitter, if you're on Twitch, go to the YouTube. Just see if the like button works. I think it does. Just go over and try it. And then if that works, do the subscribe. That would do us a great favor, because doing stuff like that allows us to make more content for you guys. So thank you all for watching, and we'll see you soon. Peace out.